platform to support and develop innovative approaches to woodland management, with the aim of developing and supporting new methods and tools to help owners and managers manage woodlands. We're kind of doing three main things. We're demonstrating and sharing innovative tools. So that's what this evening's all about. It's looking at other tools, applications, or other case studies that you might not have thought of to support you with your woodlands. Whether that's, undertaking inventories, or last week we were speaking about diversifying incomes in woodlands. So if you missed us, we had a really interesting talk from Guy at Burling Estates, and you can always catch up on that on our YouTube channel if you did miss it. We're also supporting innovators. So if you've got an innovative idea or a tool or an application, we have expert advice available to help you develop that tool further. One example, and again, you can catch up with them on our webinar from before Christmas, is WildTrack Pro. They have an online platform that helps you to map, collect data, and also complete your forms to report to a Forestry Commission on your deer management and squirrel management. And they're looking to develop that tool further to see if they can support with countryside stewardship, high tier data collection and reporting back to Forestry Commission as well. So that's a small flavour of what we're doing there. We're also developing innovative tools with the consortium that are supporting the Northwoods programme. And this is primarily looking at the MyForest application. So it's a mapping platform that allows you to go in and map your woodlands. And they're currently developing their own improved inventory tool at the moment, which is hoping to be released kind of in the next few months, which is quite exciting. And then next year, they'll be looking to develop a timber auction module, which will help you bring your woodlands through to, or any timber parcels through to sale. So ultimately, we're trying to re-establish a woodland initiative and forestry sector support programme in the North East and Yorkshire region. But the really exciting thing about webinars is that it allows us to go beyond the boundaries. And we've got Jez here with us this evening down from the Southwest. So just a quick mention of the other partners working on the project. So I work for Reheat. We are a multidisciplinary biomass engineering and forestry consultancy business. And we're kind of hosting the Northwoods programme. We've got Martin Glynn, RDI Associates, the Silver Foundation, and Timber Auctions as well, also all working on the project. But this evening we get to look at, as I say, we get to speak and invite other experts and look at what they're doing to help bring woodlands into management. And so we'll be
Oh, has anyone else lost Martha, or is it just me?
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I'll tell you what then. I'll try and share my screen and just start, should I? Give me 2 seconds. So as my screen shared now? Have we just ditched Martha completely?
Yeah, you're all
Excellent.
good, Jez.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Evening, everyone. Hopefully this will go okay. We appear to be presenting from Devon, where we have really low bandwidth because we're in a rural area, up to the northeast, where there appears to be fairly low bandwidth as well. But let's see how we get on. We've got some video to play. We'll see how that goes as well. So why on earth me? Why on earth am I here talking to you? And thank you for coming out on or staying in on a winter's evening. I have a business called Evolving Forests. We work across Europe. It started about 18 months ago. There's 7 of us in the business now, and the thrust, we have 2 sides of the business, and one side is in media creation. We do a lot of filmmaking, a lot of written word, and a lot of photography around forestry and woodlands for various people. And the other part of it is that we do a lot of development of supply chains of timber from resilient forestry. And what that means, I suppose, for us is localized solutions, or how we can move forward within a changing climate to a forestry that's still going to be there for future generations, and how we can talk to architects about what the future of materials is, and we can talk to foresters about what the future of forestry is. And so within our small team, we have an incredible range of exciting and excited people. We have built environment specialists, we have forestry people like myself, we have built environment, ecologists, biologists, and filmmakers, all within the one organization. And so a lot of what we've been doing in the last couple of years is trying to develop ways of measuring the forest. Pretty selfishly, because we spend a lot of time in the woodlands and the forest, and a lot of clients want to know how much timber they've got, then inventory is an increasingly important part of what we do. And it doesn't matter whether it's our ecologist or our forester or built environment specialist, we need to understand the state of a woodland we're in, not just about the potential of timber, but how ecologically resilient that is as well. And we make absolutely no differentiation between those two. The timber and the ecological state, the current state and the future state, are kind of all the same thing for us. And that'll probably come clear as we go on. And one of the most important things is that what we're interested in is almost not the current state of the forest, but what the state of it is going to be in 30 or 50 or 80 years' time. And so we need to be measuring the condition now in order to be able to monitor changes. And that might be changes in canopy, it might be changes in health, it might be changes in the amount of timber in those woodlands. But actually, within such a complicated system, they all feed into each other. And because we're a small business that only started sort of 18 months ago, we can't really afford expensive equipment either. But we do all have mobile phones, and we do have a couple of iPads kicking around. And we want to be able to use those to undertake all this inventory and measurement. We don't want to go out and spend 6 or 7 grand on a piece of equipment, particularly. And if we do, there's more exciting things that we can think of to spend it on. So traditionally, the way certainly timber inventory has been done, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is by taking a load of tape measures out and some paper that's about to get wet and a pen that doesn't work, and going out and creating sample plots, getting tape measures caught in brambles, swearing a lot, trying to write the results down on a piece of paper, going back, trying to interpret those. And this experience for me mainly comes out of doing a forestry degree in Aberdeen in large Sitka spruce plantations on the East Coast in the wind and rain. And then you go back, and of course, you have all these books that try and explain what the hell you're meant to do with that data. We've got the blue book, The Curse of Every Forester's training. And then, I don't know, I just picked up a selection out of the office. I've got thinning control here, mid-diameter volume tables, decimal hoppers tables, if anyone's into sawmilling. What have we got here? Roundwood and sawlog volume tables, timber measurement. The whole thing's ridiculous. I don't want all that paper. I don't want to take it out, and I'm not very good at maths. But I do want to know the state of the forests that we are going into. So the middle way solution that has been sort of favoured recently by survey specialists is things like digital calipers, Hageloff calipers, that allow you to measure things like location and diameter very easily and digitally. But they cost for a whole setup about 5 or 6 grand each. And if you've got a small woodland, or you're like us and just starting out in business, we can't afford such specialist equipment. And so we have been investigating a whole range of other ways of using mobile technology. And I'm going to run through some of these now, probably from the simplest to the most technological, and we'll demonstrate one of those in a short video. So the first is very simple app-based approach that we do quite a lot of citizen science work with volunteers, measuring the state of Dartmoor's forest or Jersey's tree. This one was developed to audit storm damaged trees on Jersey, and it allows anyone with a mobile phone to go out and undertake an audit of trees, and these are adaptable for any situation. So in this case, we're asking for species. You take a photo of the tree, the app geolocates that photo, so we've got a position, and then there's some information that we want to know specifically for this project. Is it on private land? What's the quality of the timber like? And there's a couple of apps that allow you to create your own georeferenced data to allow you to create a georeferenced questionnaire that you or anyone else can use. And it's a really good intuitive way if you want to be collecting the same data again and again, whether it's in your woodland or someone else's, or whether it's with a group of other people. And I can provide details of what these apps are later if people want. The second way we're increasingly using mobile applications is in small drone-based imagery. And, you know, often people get scared off a bit by drone-based work, but this was created using a DJI small 249-gram DJI drone that just takes photography. It's not LiDAR based at all, but this is what is called a photogrammetric point cloud image of a forest we're involved with in Dorset that we'll come back to. And there's a whole load of stuff we can take from this kind of image. It's just taken from a huge number of photos that the drone has flown over a grid across the forest. And what we were particularly interested in is looking at this feature that goes from the bottom left to the bottom right across the centre, which is a track through the forests. And we're interested in how scalloped the edges are and doing an analysis of that, and whether we want to do more scalloping and whether we want more complexity in that forest edge. And as it was, it seems a particularly good bit of track work, but there's more we can do. But we're using drones increasingly in that way. And these things are small, cheap, pocket-sized drones that we're using. And then moving on a stage from that, we start getting into phones with LiDAR-based imagery in them. So particularly the iPhone Pros and the iPad Pros. And this uses LiDAR, the sort of scanning software that's used in autonomous cars that's now in phones, to scan whole trees. And so we can use it for any number of ways. We use it to scan unusual shapes in trees, especially for crook framing or traditional boat building, where people want particular radius of bends in timber, or in this case, we're scanning forks in trees, and those will form a library of scans that the architect on this particular project can then use, because they want to use tree forks as part of the structure, but they need the right forks in the right geometry to do it. And we can just use our phones to create this kind of scanned image and library. And then the one I want to talk about the most this evening is an app called Arboreal Forest. And I'm going to talk most about this. It's because it is the one we are most commonly using, and we are now using this on a week-by-week basis in almost any application that involves standing or even falling trees. And the reason we do it is probably because it's the most similar to traditional inventory work, but completely automates it for us. What is it? What does it do? It uses an iPhone or an iPad, better with the LiDAR on it, but it can be used with just the camera on it. and it allows in-forest inventory. And that's important to us because we're very often after fine detail on the quality of timber. Often we're working directly with architects on very localized solutions where the client might want to use their own timber, and we need to know the quality of the stems that we're doing an inventory of. It takes diameter and height within sample plots, and we'll look at that in a second. It's as simple as that, but does it digitally, and then produces volumes, basal area, carbon stocks, etc., from those measurements. So what I'm going to do now is play an 8-minute video. When we tried this before, it kind of just about worked. There was, depending on how good your bandwidth is, wherever you are. If it's not working, you've got 8 minutes to make a cup of tea and at least 8 minutes of not listening to me, which is probably an advantage to everyone. So
Hi, I'm Kat, and I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how you can use Arboreal Forest, the app, to do a quick inventory of a sample plot in your forest. So to start off with, I'm going to give a demonstration in a more even-aged system. So this is a stand of Douglas fir and Norway spruce. The first thing you do is you look at the home screen. There's the word measure. You tap in there, and then it allows you to choose what kind of plot you're going to do. So you can either do a line plot like a transect or a circle plot. For this demonstration, I'm going to use the circle plot, and I'm going to choose a radius of about 8 meters because that tends to be a standard measurement. So you tap circle and then move around the iPad. And once the GPS has calibrated, you're able to plot the center point of your circle sample plot. So I'm going to do that now. And it provides you with this red marker, which you can always see on the screen and know exactly where the middle of your plot is. Then you're going to look around you and start sampling the trees. So you have a selection of species here, which you can go and find the species. You need to choose which species you're going to be measuring before each measurement because it doesn't detect automatically. So for example, here we've got a Douglas fir. So you scroll down until you find Douglas fir, tap on it, tap off it, and then you can turn to face the tree and put the iPad or phone at about breast height, and it will measure the DBH. So this is for the DBH measurements, which is you'll then do the DBH measurements for every tree in your sample plot. Now, the smart thing about this app is that it allows you to see the extent of your sample plot on the screen. So if you move towards the edge of the sample plot, it will tell you when you're outside the plot or within the plot, and it provides a blue line as a guidance. So that means you can very quickly just go and sample all the trees and know what's within or without the plot, or outside of the plot. Then once you've done diameters, you click next, and it takes you to measuring height. So the height measurement has a few more steps in it. You measure a different height for each species. So you choose the tree that's most representative of the average height in that stand, and then you click measure. Then the first thing to do is pin the tree. So at about breast height, again, you just tap the middle button, and that gives you a red marker which shows which tree you're measuring. Then you need to move away from the tree and you do a base measurement. So you try to move away the distance that's roughly almost the height of the tree, but in some cases that might not be possible. Just if it's a larger tree, move away further, it will give a more accurate reading. And then, so you move away and then you measure the base, and then you hold the iPad and you will, with it in the same place, tilt it up until you can see the top of the tree, and then mark that again, and then it will provide you with a height reading. And you do this for each species you've got in your sample plot, and then you press next. Then it will bring you to a results page which provides you with the information and a summary of the data you've collected. So for example, it already calculates things like basal area and volume. You can also add comments at this point and label your sample plot based on its geographical location. Once you're happy with all the information you've inputted, you press save, and your result will then pop up on a map showing the location and the basal area of that particular sample point. Now I'm just going to give a quick demonstration of using arboreal forest in a slightly more mixed forest that might have some younger species, younger trees, older trees, different species. So I'm just going to quickly run through the initial steps again to set up your sample point. So tap measure in the middle, chosen my circle, sample plot, size 8 meters, and then place my middle point. Now I'm going to look around me, just checking the different trees that are around. For example, over here we have a large poplar tree, but if I look up to the top, I'm seeing that it's actually dead, so I'm going to choose to not include that in my sample plot this time, but I might add it as a detail in the information section once we get to that point. So here we have a holly, which some people may choose to include in the inventory and some not. If, for example, you did want to try and measure it as part of your inventory, there is the species present here, so you select that, and then it might be slightly more tricky to do your measurement, but you can just lean in and move it up and down until you see a green square appear, and that's what you do. So this holly is 4.2 centimeters, and in my inventory I'm choosing to cut off the diameter as 5 centimeters, so not measure anything under that. So if you take your tree measurement and you realize that you no longer would like it in your plot, you can simply press the back button and it undoes that, so you can forget that that's happened. This is good also if you accidentally make a mistake then with the species name, for example. Here you can see we have 2 beech trees, but they have a joint space. However, as the space is below breast height, we can count them as 2 individual trees, for example. So I'm just going to scroll, find beech, always remembering to change the species, and then tap that tree, and then come on here. In some cases where there's a more kind of textured surface, it might take a little bit longer, or you might need to go around to find an area where there isn't species like ivy on the tree. Choose the one that you think is the most representative of your of the species height. I'm just going to choose this one. Tag it and walk away. And then we're going to do base and follow up to the top height about there. 2 meters, tick. And in this case, I might say large dead poplar standing and holly. Again, we can save that. One final thing to note is once you have collected your sample points, you can then click the cloud to upload them onto the online website, which is where you can then go and download your data. If you load the map when you have internet before you go out into the forest, you'll be able to see a map of of all the different points that you've sampled. Oh no, it's loaded now. There we go. So if you go to location, you can use this to find your location, which is here, and then you can see the sample points we've just done, and it gives the basal area at each point. You can also add a grid. You can add a grid over a certain number of hectares, for example. This will enable you to place your sample points in a more regular way if that's the kind of sampling you're going for. So yeah, you can also then use this to access the data. So if you want to say, oh, let's just double check this, you can click on it and it provides you with that information, which is, yeah, the information that you can then retrieve off the online system. So yeah, that's arboreal forest.
Good. So I should have said at the start, that is Kat, our young graduate ecologist, and it filmed by Lottie, work placement student that's with us, it was sort of a first attempt at filmmaking. Alice, our filmmaker, in an attempt to try to make us understand the filmmaking process better, has tasked us with all going out and making short films and editing them. And that was the first attempt at filmmaking. And I should probably also say that there's been a major update of our boreal forest since we made that video just before Christmas. So it can do a lot. There's a lot more added to it now. And I think Johan is on the call with us, the developer of our boreal forest in Sweden. So I just want to quickly go through exactly how we've used our boreal forest in a real life situation. And the place we've used it most is a forest called Hook Park in Dorset. And it's boringly typical, I suppose, of English forestry. Its major species is Norway spruce and beech, with some oak and an increasing number of other species as we start to move towards a continuous cover type system or more complicated sort of small coop system. But there's never been a full inventory of it, ever. When we've done sales of spruce, we've gone in and done some inventory, but only on an ad hoc basis. And what we wanted was to create a 100-year management plan for Hook Park about how we were going to transition to a more resilient system. And to do that, we wanted to start with a comprehensive baseline that included an inventory and also a ecological inventory as well. And we've used this sort of mashup system that we've sort of developed with our ecologists, where we run these ecological transects in a W shape, and at each node in the W shape in each compartment, we will do inventory sample plots. And so we, like Kat was just showing, we created a grid to start with and undertook sample plots within the center of each of those grids. And using the iPad or the mobile phone enables us to move pretty quickly. It takes, in a clear area without brambles, it probably takes 3 or 4 minutes to do a sample plot. On the flat areas of beech, perhaps a bit faster. On the areas of bracken infested spruce, perhaps a bit slower than that, but it's a pretty fast process. And this is the kind of results we get that Kath was trying to show. So this is from a number of plots, sample plots. And so as you collect the sample plots, you start to increase the amount of data. So this typically in this sample plot that was quite complex, we've got alder, spruce, birch, Norway spruce, and willow, and we can see a breakdown of the standing volume per hectare and the standing of each species. We've got the basal area in the stand. We can see volume under bark, which is useful for when we're using it for sawmilling purposes. And had we inputted it, age and calculation of growth rates. And then there's a secondary screen that can give us carbon dioxide, carbon data based on the age, size of trees that we've got there. And then all this data we can then download later and use for whatever modeling we want in a spreadsheet format. It's kind of interesting that data, digital data and analog data is obviously easiest to collect in a monocultural system. We don't tend to find ourselves in that many monocultural systems these days, but we do find ourselves in a lot of mixed systems and continuous cover systems, and also old overstored coppice systems. And what we're interested in is how we can undertake inventory of these as fast as we can in a monocultural system. And I think that's the huge advantage for us, is that these mobile type technologies can allow us to do inventory work in complex systems almost as fast as we can in a monocultural system. And it opens up a whole world of what you can do within these woodlands that perhaps previously would be undermanaged. So for instance, this photograph is in Lesners Abbey Woods in zone 3 or 4 in London. Previously it has obviously been thinned at some point in the past. It's obviously a coppice system. No one had ever done any inventory work here, but it is stuffed full of good quality, sweet, durable, sweet chestnut. And because we can go in there, the owner was never going to pay for a full analog inventory that would have taken days to do, but they were happy to pay for a day's worth of our time to go in and do inventory work in here. And we could do an inventory of the whole wood. And as a result, we can build the new visitors centre there using their own timber. We also use it in a quite unconventional way, which is probably going to horrify Johan if he's on the call, but we've started using it in a lot of our urban forestry as well. And I noticed that the new version allows transects and whole area plots to be done. But we do a lot of work with urban timber, and we do a lot of work with repurposing timber coming out of development sites into architectural applications. And it allows us to do a very quick and proper inventory. So in this case, we might take the height as just the sawable height rather than top height of the tree, because all we're interested in here is sawable volumes. And then we've just been in Jersey on the Channel Islands, where there's a huge amount of storm damaged timber, and we've managed to use our boreal forest to start taking audits of storm damaged trees as well. Mainly taking diameters from them, but there's about 40,000 trees and they're really difficult to measure. And being able to just go and do that digitally means that we might actually use some of this timber from 40,000 trees, which is going to be probably 10,000 cubic meters of timber out of these, but we couldn't otherwise do. And then finally, I suppose, just to talk quickly about what the future of we think these mobile applications might be, because at the moment they're fairly standalone. We use our boreal forest a lot. We use the LiDAR scanning software to create 3D scans of trees quite a lot. We use Merlin, the ornithology app, to record fixed station monitoring of bird life quite a lot. There's a whole number. We use Timbiter to measure timber stack volumes. And the problem is they're all quite standalone. But we also use mapping, online mapping, where we use My Forest for our forest management at Hook Park, for instance. And what we want to be able to do is to combine all of these things together. We want to be able to go and take our inventory measurement using our boreal forest. And when we get back home, it be automatically uploaded onto our My Forest management system. Or we want to be able to take the results of our sound recordings for ornithology monitoring and have them uploaded. And it's, I suppose, the simplest way of thinking about it is if anyone uses Strava, the exercise monitoring app, you go out and you might have a Garmin watch or a Polar watch or an Apple watch or whatever it is, and it records the data as you're going, and when you get home, that has magicked itself onto Strava. I am no technological expert, but what we want to do is try and create a similar system. So we're working with our boreal forest, and we're working with My Forest and Silver Foundation and Northwoods to try and make this happen using something called API keys. And come September, October this year, hopefully we'll be able to trial this system, and we're going to be looking for a test group in the southwest and the northeast to trial this application where you go out, you undertake inventory work, and test how well it uploads itself and how useful it is to you to have that data automatically recorded. And I think for us, it's interesting in that it enables you not just to be able to plan the management of your woodlands for the next 10-year cycle, but provides ongoing baseline data for the management and health and condition of your woodlands. And I think I will leave it at that, and time to take any questions.
Jez, sorry, I don't know. Rosanna, do you want to chair questions? Can't hear you, Rosanna.
I've got no audio, Rosanna.
Shall I just go ahead, Jez, whilst Rosanna sorts? Thanks, Jez. Thanks, Rosanna. So, Jez, I think we. Hi, mate. I think we, and hello to everybody else who might know me. I'm Dougal Driver from Grown in Britain, and hello to those who don't know me. And Jez, I think we touched on this the other day, actually, but I'll put it in the chat, and I don't know whether everyone can see the chat, but it was about the fact that I think arboreal is based possibly on European growth patterns and taper and cylindrical species, you know, morphology. Is there some adjustment we need to make to get to kind of true measurement for when we're doing plots? By the way, great video. It might have been one of the first videos you've done, but actually I really like that kind of, it felt like you were there, didn't it? So I really like that. Yeah, I hope you understand the question.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks. The outtakes of the video are.
Oh no.
Hello?
Yeah, Jez, you back?
Hey. Am I back? Not really quite sure whether you can hear me or not, but I'll carry on answering Dougal's question. This is something we're trying to discuss with our boreal forest, is to look at what the data standards are and the models that we're using. For us, we're generally looking for if we're looking at whole forest monitoring, we're looking at broad trends. If we are looking at timber for architectural purposes, we're generally looking at the fact that the sawmill is going to lose 20% or 30% in the sawing means that super accuracy isn't quite so important for us.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Rosanna, I don't know whether you're back online, but I think Roderick's got his hand up. Like, why am I chairing this? But I suspect Roderick might have an answer to my question as well.
I can't answer your question, but I can ask a question. In practice, say if you come back in 20 years' time, well, you've done one of these inventories, you come back in 20 years' time, and you use the application again, maybe after some thinning operations or something like that. Is the GPS accuracy which is logged against each measurement in the first instance going to be accurate enough to tie the second measurement back to that stem?
We were discussing, we're generally getting 1.5 to 3 meter accuracy. I think the answer is yes or no, depending on how accurate you want to be. If you're a statistician in forest research, then probably not. If you're an actual real-time forester, it's probably absolutely fine, I'd suggest. Yeah, if you're looking at 20-year differences in, say, inventory or volumes or canopy cover, canopy density, that kind of thing, I think it's 3 meters is absolutely fine. But yes, not if you're an academic.
Well, I'm an ex-academic.
Right.
So I guess the second question is, do any of these tools provide for sort of a local GPS anchoring point to take your accuracy down to like 10 centimeters or something like that? You know, those tools are available on surveying platforms. I'm just not sure whether you can get a plugin to work with your iPad or your iPhone or Android.
Yeah, I have no idea. In all honesty, I just don't know. I think our attitude to it is sort of coming from our position of selling timber to sawmills and looking at, you know, over 120 hectares. We want to manage the broad sort of health of the forest or a compartment, and that accuracy doesn't happen to matter to us. And I think this is a really interesting conversation we need to have with statisticians and researchers and academics about this sort of difference of needs and how we reconcile those and find a middle way to deal with that.
So if I take the academic hat off and I'll put my business hat on, if I'm looking to, if I wanted to add value, I would say, here is a survey I did 5 years ago. I've now done another survey today. You know, I can prove to a buyer the rate at which it's actually growing. And then I'm not selling what's there today. I'm saying, here's your growth profile. Look at, you know, look at this amazing model you're buying, probably involving a hockey stick, of course, you know, and, you know, and that's real value add from a sales point of view.
Yeah. And if you've done, I didn't touch upon things like sampling methodology and sampling rates, but, you know, if you've got a monocultural stand, then you might do less sampling. The way we look at it is, the more complex the stand, the more complex sample plot, the more either we do more or bigger sample plots. And our boreal forest is quite good in allowing you to go bigger or more. And so the more you do, we're increasing the accuracy. And I think if you are a woodland owner or an agent with a lot of small parcels of woodland, we can envisage you or us doing a survey based on what we think the minimum sampling requirements are. But it's so quick to use. Any of these mobile systems, they're just on your phone. If you just happen to be in that plot, in that compartment with a contractor or walking through with your dog, or whatever, doing a couple of sample plots and adding to that database is only going to increase the accuracy.
Can I come in, Jess? Sorry, so I don't want to hog this, but Roderick, if you, I'll drop my email into the chat. But Roderick, Growing in Britain's running a research project at the moment, which actually does need accurate georeferencing, because what we're trying to do is measure those benefits as you baseline and measure the increase in benefits through the actions of people who manage those assets, whether it's carbon or biodiversity or whatever. So you're right. I think there are horses for courses, as Jez points out. So I had a conversation only today actually with a LiDAR provider who reckons he can provide georeferencing for everyone else to do their plots around. So there is obviously some way of doing it, perhaps through LiDAR. So I'll come back to you on that because I don't have the answers yet. But I think actually that you're right. There are certain assets when you certainly come to monetize them, and also perhaps say to a wildlife trust, we have enhanced the asset habitat wise or species wise by X. You do need to be really quite accurate to within certainly less than 3 or 4 meters, because that could be one tree in or one tree out. So Jez, I absolutely get what you're saying, and I think probably for 80% of activity, it's fine. But for machine learning and AI, in order to make sure that those machines do learn accurately exactly what the ground truthing is telling them, we need to know what trees are inside that plot and what trees aren't inside that plot, etc., etc. So I'm going to put myself on mute and I'm going to put my email in the chat if you want to follow up.
Thanks, Dougal. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Okay, I've moved over the laptops. I'm sorry about that. Thanks, Rod, for your questions, and also Dougal for chipping in there. Does anyone else have any questions? I haven't got any other hands raised or any other questions in the chat, but if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, you should be able to find that on the top of your screen or possibly the bottom. Can't see any other questions at the moment. Jez, you touched on the work that you're doing at the moment with Silver Foundation and My Forest and the workshops looking to kind of understand and test out the use of this in different landscapes. And you touched on it again, talking about monocultures and kind of mixed stands. Are you hoping for a diverse kind of user pool as well in your project?
Yeah, so we're going to be putting test groups together, one in the southwest, one in the northeast, and I think one in the sort of Midlands, Oxfordshire area. And we want to get a diversity of forest types in that. And we're doing this appreciating that the forestry up in the northeast is very different to the southwest, but also a diversity of user groups as well. So we want woodland owners, we want agents of small estates, of large estates, public sector, NGOs, and I think Northwoods is going to be putting a user group together for us up there to do that.
Yeah, so absolutely. And if there's anyone on the call that's interested in taking part in that, then please do get in touch afterwards. Thomas has asked, is arboreal forest only available for Apple devices?
It is at the moment. I don't know if Johan's on the call yet. I can't see all the participants. He might be better able to answer that.
We've not spotted him on.
Okay, that's a shame. My understanding is that it's being developed to go onto Android as well as Apple at the moment. So what we have found is that the using the camera on iPhones and iPads gives us probably about the same accuracy as manual analog measurements, but using the LiDAR increases the speed and accuracy. Again, on top of that.
Rod, do you have another question, or is that a legacy hand? I presume that's a legacy hand there from Rod. Oh, no, there we go.
It is a legacy hand, sorry.
Okay. No worries.
I was writing Dougal an email.
Fair enough. So we've got, a range of different users. Oh, Chris has just asked a question. Is it a one-off payment or a subscription service?
It's incredibly usefully a subscription service. So you can subscribe to Arboreal Forest weekly or monthly. So we only subscribe for weeks we're using it. If we know we're going to use it for like a lot over a month, we'll do that. But for instance, we got a bit of a lag for a few weeks now, and so we've just cancelled the subscription until we need it again. They're also developing. They're very flexible and up for development. So we approached them a year ago and said, "This is great, but we've got so much coppice woodland that we have no idea how to undertake inventory of. Can you do that for us?" I'm thinking they just turn around and go, "What the hell is a coppice woodland? It's not a spruce plantation in Sweden." But luckily someone in Italy had randomly asked them the same question. So I think they have an update coming out in February or March that is going to test how you can use the photogrammetry and LiDAR to measure volumes of coppice stands, which might in turn be quite useful for biomass production applications.
I think it's really interesting, and you touched on I think the development of the tools, and Dougal's touched on, using LiDAR and trying to integrate all these different tools into either a usable platform. But you're seeing developments all the time in terms of tech, availability, cost, and also in terms of the user groups that are using them. So it's quite an interesting place to be, particularly thinking forestry with all these tools kind of developing and trying to integrate and work together. Dougal, do you want to come in?
Yeah, and if no one else puts their hand up, you're just going to get a love in from Jesme and you, Rosanna. But you mentioned about the iPad, and your colleague there, Kat, was using an iPad. Why an iPad over an iPhone? Just is there other functionality and other usability that you'd recommend getting an iPad, which obviously puts maybe 400 or 500 quid onto the price?
Because we had an iPad and we've got a waterproof case for it. If I'm really honest, it's because that's what we have, and it's actually kind of easier to have the bigger screen. But that's part of the reason we've sort of started developing this, is because we just wanted to use stuff we already had.
So there's no bigger chip, or there's not a bigger data crunching ability to your knowledge?
No, it works just as fast. I mean, Kat seems to have requisitioned the iPad for herself, so I end up just using my phone most of the time. I seem to have lost all control over the.
You said all the wrong thing, because I was hoping to get a new iPad Pro into the stable here.
Oh, sorry. You need an iPad Pro.
Well, Roderick might come to my rescue. I don't know. But,
well, yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, I've used a lot of different computing platforms. I'm a little bit of an Apple fanboy at the moment, but some of them, different phones have got different like distance measurement technologies in them. So I think you've got on most phones, you've got a camera and they focus. So they might be able to estimate distance with a focus. Certainly iPhones, on the front-facing camera on the iPhone, you've got time of flight. I think you've got time of flight LiDAR, so it fires photons out and then it watches them bounce off your face and times how long it takes to get back. At least they used to originally, to map your face. So certainly different measurement methods will give you different abilities to measure three-dimensional structures, but this is probably getting really nerdy. But if someone could answer that, it might justify the device of your choice.
I think I know with the phone types, there's been a lot of talk around this, and particularly around applications for measuring kind of log stacks and that sort of thing. And it is, they've got the different technology within the cameras and the phones, and that's what Apple are advancing. But I think there are certain other brands of phones that are looking to develop that have the LiDAR in the next few versions. And so that also can potentially, it's not necessarily that the tech isn't there. Sorry, it's not necessarily that the software developers don't want to do it. It's that, Apple at the moment are the ones that are investing and putting that capability onto the phones, whereas others aren't necessarily doing that. They're looking to do that in the next few iterations. So that also can hopefully open up, the usability, although you might have to get an upgraded phone. But I think that's also one of the aspects of it.
I think a real game changer for us is going to be the introduction of, when it happens, of LiDAR into small, cheap drones rather than big, expensive ones. I know Dougal's doing a lot of work with Grown in Britain on drone-based surveying. But we have a drone out for our filming work on a weekly basis, and we use these very small drones because they go under the Flight Authority, FAA or whatever it's called, is under the sort of radar, and they give 4K footage, so we can use them for photogrammetry work, which is great. But to be able to use them for LiDAR work, I think will be a game changer for us.
Yeah, the off the top of my head, you're looking at an 8K package going up to about a 30K package if you want to put LiDAR on it. That's a pretty big jump. All in, or everything all in.
Yeah, as you say, hopefully that it'll be more accessible, and also the cost will start to come down as it is more widely available. So we'll have to just watch watch what happens moving forwards. John Herbert has a question. John, I don't know whether you want to unmute yourself. Jez has frozen, so I'm not sure if he can hear what we're saying. I suggest he can't currently. John's question is about the accuracy of the data, Jez. I suppose is that kind of ground truthing? Is that what you're referring to, John, in terms of comparing, you know, the arboreal measurement compared to your standard measurements? Is that what you'd say? Jez,
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
For some reason the mic wasn't working.
No
Yes,
worries.
just wondering, as I say, wondering how accurate it is compared to obviously the traditional methods, because obviously you can take into account stem deformities, splits, etc., etc. Yeah, how have you compared it against the traditional ways?
Yep, sorry, I dropped out for a few minutes there. It wasn't anything you were saying, Dougal. I just so my computer decided it didn't like whatever you were saying. But we're back now. We found, so we've done an obscene amount of testing against analog measurements because we're never that convinced it works.
Yeah.
And get consistently good results every time we do it. It's sort of plus or minus 5% of what we get using traditional techniques. And I have to say, once you start watching people do diameter measurements, you realize how poor they are as well.
Yeah.
Can I come in on that? Because we're in the middle of a project sort of at that end of this research, as you know, we're sort of, and I do have to remind that we've got a range of partners from satellite to crewed flight. We've put aeroplanes up with very powerful cameras, got drones, and we've just instigated a LiDAR survey as well, handheld LiDAR and drone LiDAR. And I must admit, as a forester, with all my blue books here and all of the books that Jez mentioned earlier, I have this feeling that ground truthing is the truth. You know, he's even got the bloody word in the title, hasn't it? It's truthing. and you go out and you say, you chuck a quadrat on a habitat for biodiversity, or you walk into a woodland and you do a plot, and you walk on and you do another, and you think, hang on a minute, this is an estimate. And actually the blue book is based on a predictive scale based on growth patterns from about 40 years ago. So even the ground truthing is slightly compromised. What we're trying to get to is a place where, you know, true measurement and true maths, true calculation using, you know, the form of trees is the way of assessing how remotely assessed data is judged. I might never live long enough to get to where we can say this is done, but if that was a little bit behind what you were sort of coming back on there, John, I think it's right to be slightly wary, because even ground truthing is based on, you know, judgments and assessment and guessing. Unless you do physically do it mathematically and statistically, you know, based on what you see and mechanically measure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point there, Dougal. My last thing, Jez, slope correction. How does it work okay with working on slopes? Because we've got a fair bit of steep land in southwest.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of slope in Devon. And it's I guess, I mean, I'm no scientist or digital tech guy, but I assume it's working on the height is working on angles. And it seems to cope with that absolutely fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, John. Rod, last question, I think, and then we'll wrap up.
Does the app support the collection of data on a per tree basis? For example, like disease state in a structured form, so that could be referred to later, for instance, in sort of ash dieback situations?
So you can download data on a per tree basis, but only on the data that it collects. And this is the same with all apps. They have limitations. So you're collecting diameter and height for each tree, and it's one of the things we're really interested in, because we often have need for per tree data. In our case, it might be timber quality or bend or height, saw log height, or that kind of thing, and it can't do that. Arboreal forest can't do that at the moment, and that's not to say it's not an area they wouldn't develop, or there might be another app, I think, to do that. So, for instance, we're interested in how we combine our 3D scans into arboreal forest data, but this comes down to this sort of app integration work and using API keys to be able to allow apps to talk to each other within common systems. Yeah, everything has its limitations.
Thanks, Jez. Thank you all very much for attending this evening, and in particular, a big thanks to Jez, Kat, Lottie, and everyone at Evolving Forest for putting together the video and for giving up their time this evening. Thank you also, Dougal, for chipping in. You've raised your hand. I'm not sure if there's a brief thanks that you want to say. We will be sending out a short evaluation form. We'd love your feedback if there are any topics that you'd like to see in future. Please do let us know via that. We have pretty much come to the end of our webinar series for the winter now, but that means we're beginning to run our demonstration events out and about, looking at trees in real life, which is way more important and also quite interesting as well. So please do follow our Northwoods event page, keep up to date with our emails, and you should get notifications and be able to book on there. Without further ado, I think we'll sign off there. So thank you all once again.
Thank you all. Cheers.